Welcome to the Startup Grind.
All right, everybody, thanks for coming out tonight. Startup Grind Portland's third event here. We have Josh Reich, he's the CEO of Simple. Can I get everybody to stand up and thank him? I really appreciate you taking your time out to speak at Startup Grind Portland to all of our community here. So here at Startup Grind Portland, we like to go way back. We'll just start the interview with learning a little bit about you. Tell us where you grew up. Tell us about your mother and father.
Okay, that is going way back. So my parents met probably in 1970. I'm not going to go that far back. So I grew up in Australia. That's where my accent comes from. Came to the States about 10 years ago. I've been in Portland for 3 years. Most of my time prior to here was living in New York. What do my parents do? My father is a doctor, and my mum is actually an entrepreneur. She's now retired, but she started a business making and selling educational videos for schools. So she had a background in public relations, quit that when she started a family, then decided to get back into it, and she had a lot of contacts in the media space, saw a need to make videos, and so she started making videos for schools. This was around the time the VCR was just kicking off, and it meant that I got to see her not only build like an amazing business from just being a single woman running a business at home alone to growing it to hundreds of people, but it meant that I had the most awesome kick-ass educational video collection. Like kids would go to the Blockbuster, but I'd go to like the parents' study, and I could watch all these BBC documentaries, and
Awesome.
It was really awesome, yeah. It was so nerdy. And,
So I'm guessing this was your first entrepreneurial experience then?
yeah, first exposure to it, yeah, absolutely.
So what was your first real entrepreneurial effort?
So possibly by watching a lot of videos. Actually, it was linked to my mum. So she made a video for Apple, for the Apple II when it came out, teaching schools how to use the Apple II. And Apple gave her a computer to use for the thing, and they never took it back. And it was sitting in this box at our house. And my parents were telling me, they're going to take it back. You can't use it. And after like a month, they're like, okay, I guess you can use it. And so I taught myself how to program. And then a couple of years later, with a bunch of friends, I think we were 10 years old, we formed a company called DataServe. And if you actually go on the web right now, you can see dataserve.org. We formed this company. We had annual general meetings. We passed motions and resolutions and did all this busy work. And we occasionally wrote software. It was, yeah.
How many of you was there for that?
Well,
all 10 years old?
We were 10 and 11 years old. There were 2 of us, but then we found out about this other group of 3 kids, and we took them over. We acquired them. You can actually find our merger paperwork when we were 11 years old. I think we acquired them for $12 in equity because we didn't actually have the cash at the time. And so we became 5 or 6 people. And if you look and see where those people are today, they're all doing like really weird, crazy, amazing things. So
it's really awesome, actually.
yeah, it's
first acquisition, $12.
Yeah.
All right. So what was your first job then? Was this considered a real job, or you consider?
No, that was sort of playing around. So I guess my first job was working for my mum, working in the stockroom, stocking videos. Occasionally, I'd like play on computer stuff. My first real job, like not working for my parents, was in first year of college. One of the guys who I knew through DataServe was working at a software engineering company, and they had an ISP, sort of a subunit, and I joined there as a systems engineer, just building systems administration software.
That was during the .com era, right?
No, this was before that. This was like 94, 96-ish. So I guess that was .com era. That was the start of the .com era. It wasn't like the crash yet.
So what was it like working for a startup then, as opposed to like, now startups are a totally different game?
It was crazy the amount of capital they required to do things. Like the computers they were using were really expensive computers, and as a relatively young person, it was amazing to play with that hardware. And then I went on and worked at another software company, and sort of went through this transition from really expensive racks of servers that were worth millions of dollars to moving to Linux machines and open sourced software. And this was sort of before the cloud, but you saw this tipping point in 2002-ish when all the money dried up and you couldn't go out and spend $1 million on Sun or SGI hardware, but you could go out and buy a computer for $100 and do the same thing.
Yeah, there's not 100 investors, right, in the dot-com era.
Yeah, exactly. And this was in Australia where the venture capital environment is very different to America. The venture capitalists weren't really there. It was really funded by banks who had sort of venture arms. And it was very different. Yeah.
Was there accelerators or incubators or anything like that then?
No, nothing like that. Yeah.
Interesting. And so straight out of that, or were you already at University of Melbourne? Or?
Yeah, so I had a really sort of weird career path. I went to college around the time I started that first ISP job, and I went to school to study medicine, and I did that for a number of years, but always sort of moonlighted as a software engineer. Ended up taking a year off to work as a systems engineer and then a 3D graphics designer, and then came back and did a year of obstetrics and realised that I didn't want to be a doctor, and so I went and became the CTO of another friend's company, and while I was doing that, completed a degree in mathematics, and then we sold that business and a whole bunch of other stuff.
And you make this story really quick, but that was you did 8 years of clinical.
No, it wasn't 8 years, it was 5 years. 6 years of that.
And preclinical, you did.
So it was those were 3 of the 5 of the 6. Yeah.
And then you just completed the mathematics degree in less than 1 year, no less.
Yeah, well, I was always pretty nerdy, and I'd used to be like part of the physics Olympiad thing, so I was able to skip a lot of the first and second year courses and talk my way into doing the third year courses, even though I didn't have the prerequisites, but I did okay.
That's all that matters is getting started.
Yeah.
So you switched to the mathematics degree, and from there graduated Melbourne University and moved on straight to an MBA, or?
Yeah, pretty much. This was 10 years after I started my undergraduate degree, so there was a lot of stuff going on in between. And I completed my maths degree while we were selling a business, and there was a marketing analytics business where I was doing sort of the analytics engineering, and I wanted to move from marketing into finance. This was sort of still early days of online marketing analytics. People really liked the charts and sort of the fact that it looked like science, but they weren't actually doing anything with it, and that was
start of big data.
Yeah, and it was frustrating for me to have people like pay lip service to the numbers, and I was kind of driven by that stuff. And so I thought finance would be a good place where I could use those skills. So I used the money from that sale to finance my first year of my MBA program and moved to the States at that point.
Smooth. So. From where did you go to get the MBA? Carnegie?
Yeah.
And what was the jump? Where's that located in?
That's in Pittsburgh.
Okay. And so what made you jump from Melbourne? Was this your first visit here in America? Or?
No, I took some time off and traveled around the States and Europe a couple of times throughout my undergraduate degree. I'd never been to Pittsburgh, but I knew Carnegie Mellon from being a really good computer science school and having a really good math department, and I wanted to do a more mathematically oriented business school program, and so they offer that.
So were you working at the same time, or just full-time MBA?
No, I was working at the same time. So the first year I was just studying, and then I got an internship in New York that turned out to be the first employee at a startup. Like, I had no idea it was a startup, and immediately got sucked into that, and ended up staying in New York and just sort of telecommuting for my second year of business school.
You thought they were pretty established at this point when you were joining on?
No, it was a crazy idea, and it was just it was a lot of fun, and I got to be like back at the ground level of something, which I really enjoyed.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you jumped from graduating with a finance degree after all the surgery straight into marketing. Why not another finance one? So it was marketing data almost, right?
Yeah, it was marketing analytics. We did a lot of work with agencies, helping them sort of design campaigns and sort of introducing them to the idea that you could test things on the internet, and you have a lot of data and you could test different campaigns, and that was like blowing people's mind. And then I went to finance and did that for a number of years.
So what was Trippion Technologies?
So Trippion Technologies was the company in Australia that was doing the marketing analytics, yeah.
And then from there, you went to I2PI?
I2PI is just sort of like my personal consulting business. I just did consulting for the acquirer who acquired Trafion.
Roots was more of the agency style, or?
No, Root was the startup in New York. Yeah,
okay.
The crazy business. Yeah.
And so what was crazy about it?
It was run by this really phenomenal serial entrepreneur who I remain really close friends with till today. And it was just a business that was trying to do 10 things at the same time. And every 6 months I get entrepreneurs who reach out to me to ask me about that experience because they're trying to pursue one of those 10 things. And we have a lot of lessons learned from that. We raised way too much money, grew too fast, tried to do too many things, ended up in the center of the mortgage market in 2006, which was really good. But by 2007, it got really bad. And it was just a crazy business, yeah.
And so what was the end to Roots Market?
It died.
Just kind of fizzled out?
Yeah, there was a battle between the board of directors and the entrepreneur founder, and they got kicked out. They asked me to stay for a year to sort of try and sort of shepherd the business.
Save some of the money that was puddled in there?
Yeah, nothing was saved. It was all gone.
That sounds messy.
It was messy, but it was a really good lesson.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so it just fizzled out and everybody just went their separate ways? It was just all lost?
I left before it completely died. There were still probably 20 people there at that time. I ended up joining a hedge fund and sort of thought I'd escape the startup thing for a while and then realized that I just missed it. Yeah.
And so with the hedge fund thing, what was your main purpose there?
Purpose was to make a lot of money. Not really. So for me, it was like the perfect job on paper. It's kind of why I went to business school. It was like really mathematical, very analytical. It was very lucrative as well, which was interesting. And on paper, I thought this is what I wanted to do. And I was there for a couple of years, and the work was super intellectually stimulating, but there was no fire or passion to what people were doing. Like, it was the sort of environment that made enough money in their first week of operating each year to cover their annual expenses, which is phenomenal. It's a great business to be at from a financial perspective. But that meant that the office culture was such that this time of the year, people would just disappear for 4 months, which is a great place to retire. But coming from the startup world, where you feel like that if you're missing something for 15 minutes, everything's going to be on fire, it was disconcerting to realize that I could literally leave the office for weeks and no one would know. And it sucked because it didn't feel like I was creating anything of value. And then you talk to people on Wall Street and sort of you ask them what value they're creating for the world. They say, you know, we provide liquidity to markets. And okay, that's noble, I guess. But when I speak to people, no one says, oh, I really wish there was more liquidity in markets. Like, no one's going hungry at night because there's a lack of...
It doesn't make you feel good when you go to sleep at night. I don't think it gives you that warm feeling.
It's not what I wanted on my tombstone. You know, Josh created liquidity in markets. And so I left, went back to doing consulting and realized I wanted to go back into the startup thing.
And so from there, you had a bad experience, and that was the start, I'm guessing, to Simple?
I know the bad experience you're talking about, and like from a narrative perspective, it would be great if that happened first. It happened like 2 weeks after I thought of doing this, and it would have been perfect if it happened 2 weeks earlier.
It's so perfect. It's become the story. I mean, if you look everywhere, it's
right.
What's told about Simple and how it's founded.
Yeah, so the actual founding happened like 2 weeks earlier. Actually, probably the idea for it came like 10 years earlier, like when I moved to America. My first experience in Pittsburgh was I had to find an apartment and sort of get myself set up. And one of the things I needed to do was like pay for electricity and gas, and the only way I could do that was writing a check. And I just sold a business in Australia. I'm coming to study finance and accounting, and like I'm a smart dude, I think. I had no fucking idea. Sorry. I had no idea how to fill out a check. Like, I'd never filled one out before in my life. And like, I'm coming to this land known for technological innovation. Yet I had to put a pen to paper to send money around. And I didn't have internet at that point, so I couldn't just like Google how to fill out a check. So I had to knock on my neighbor's door and ask them, like, what does this mean? Because it's got the words that like pay to the order of, and that's like really weird language. Like, is that where I put the name, or like pay to the order of $100? I didn't want to get it wrong, so it was weird, and it just felt weird. And then there were like late payment fees and overdraft fees, and this realization I was in an adversarial relationship with my bank. And I had to deal with that just because that's the way banking was here.
Is that not the way the banking is in Australia?
I didn't have to... The thing that was different was there's like this common sense thing in America, which is you have to be on top of your money. Like that concept was weird to me. Like, why do I have to be on top of my money? Like, I put my money in the bank. I pay my bills. They hold my money for me. I don't have to like check each statement for a $35 overdraft fee or worry about them reordering transactions to screw me over. Like, that just doesn't happen in a lot of countries outside of America. It came to a head in 2009 when I was trying to sort of organise my household finances, and I realised how hard it was to reconcile everything, and I realised that the bank should be able to help me with this stuff, but because I had this feeling that they were my adversary, and at every turn they didn't do anything to make me think that they were able to help me out, they just didn't provide that service to customers. And so I spoke to a friend of mine who I went to business school with, who was working at McKinsey, doing banking consulting. And sort of we started speaking about banking in America, and we had this light bulb realization, which was really the nut of the idea behind Simple. And that the realization was that banks fundamentally make money by keeping customers confused. Like, they make more money from fees and charges than they do from providing banking services. And when you're a consumer, no matter how much you're educated about finance, if the bank is profiting from you not understanding, you're never going to be able to answer the questions that keep you up at night and really sort of tie you in knots as you worry about getting control of your money. And once we realised that's how banks were set up, we thought, is it possible to do the opposite? And then 2 weeks later, like, Chase just screwed me over in a really awesome way. And I was like, fuck it, let's do this. Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I've been screwed over from Chase withdrawal fees and stuff.
I shouldn't be naming names. This is being recorded.
The truth.
Jamie Dimon's going to hunt me down.
And so you guys discussed this for 2 weeks. I mean, did it come up like going up against big banks? I mean, talk about like why people haven't done this yet and what kind of process you'd have to go through to even get started? Yeah,
so as I said, like, my co-founder was at McKinsey, so he's a management consultant, and I don't know if you've worked with management consultants, but you ask them how to do something, they're like, oh, it's easy. So like, I totally was relying on him. I knew nothing about this space, and I still have that Yahoo Messenger conversation when we were talking about this. It's like, yeah, it'll take 6 months. It'll be easy.
And it's Shamir or Alex?
I'm totally Shamir. I'm throwing him under the bus now. He's an awesome guy. It took a lot longer than 6 months and a lot of work, but so do all good things.
Absolutely. And was it one CTO that's built this whole platform, or a large team?
It was a large team. So so Shamir and I quit our jobs, started working on the business together, and his job was really to work out how we structure this from a regulatory perspective and an economic perspective. He understood the economics of banking very well, and he understood the regulatory space very well. My job was to think about sort of the user experience and the technology. I built an original prototype, which was horrible, and we sort of used that to raise a seed round. We also put up a website where we told people that, hey, we wanted to start a bank that respected people, treated people honestly, used technology to help people understand, that sort of stuff. And
like a landing page or just a blog?
Just a landing page. Just a landing page where, like, we wanted to see if other people thought that this was a good idea. Like, at that point, I had a friend who was one of the investors in Root, who promised me that if I ever started a business, he'd give me 50K. And so I sent him an email saying, let's do this. And
that's not a bad promise.
Not a bad promise. But he assumed I'd do something in marketing services because that's how he knew me. And his response to that email was like, oy vey, regulation. But yeah, a promise is a promise. So we got the check. But we wanted to like validate the idea with more people. So we put up this landing page and we got people to sign up. And we asked them, for everyone who signed up, we Googled them and asked them a personal question about their banking. So if you signed up, we'd say, hey, Chris, I see you're currently working doing consulting. I'd love to know what you think about banking. It's amazing what you can find by Googling someone's email address. And when you put that one sentence, the response rate was just through the roof. We were getting a 70% response rate to this form email, basically. And it started off that I just tweeted out a link to this, and I started getting a bunch of my friends sign up, and then it got picked up by some blogs, and it just went out and out and out. And then one day, Shamir got an email from this guy, Alex, and he was working at Twitter, and Shamir CC'd me on his response, and I was on the subway in New York. I'm like, holy shit, that's Alex Payne. Like I'd read his blog. I was a big fan of how he wrote and how he thought about the world and the work that he'd done at Twitter. And so I just jumped off the subway at the next station in the middle of nowhere in Brooklyn, and gave this guy a call. A week later, that weekend, he flew out to New York. We spent the weekend in my basement just talking about the product and what we wanted to do. Sunday night, he called up Biz and Ev and quit Twitter and joined Simple the next day.
Awesome.
So he joined us as our CTO, and he looked at my code and just threw it all out, which was totally the right thing to do. And we then went out, raised a Series A, hired a team of about 8 people. We had our second all-hands meeting like right there in this room when this was like 2 companies ago, and built a prototype and sort of went on from there.
What was it like putting the Series A round together for this type of industry?
Pain in the ass. I have a spreadsheet and I still have it. Most people talk about how you want to speak to like 20 VCs. We spoke to over 90 venture capital firms, and we got like over 100 no's. Like we got no's multiple times from the same firm.
Very quickly, or?
No, VCs never say a quick no, but they were really quick no's with us. They're like, banking, no way, we're not going to touch that. In fact, when we did our Series A, it became a competitive process with a few different firms competing to lead that A. They'd all said no multiple times, but somehow we sort of got them over that hump.
And what did you end up raising in the Series A?
2.9, yeah.
And that was the first raise of how many?
Of 3, really. We did a seed round of 200-ish, and then I think we did that folded into the Series A, which was 2.9. Then we did a Series B of 10, and we've done some debt financing along the way.
And recently been acquired by Banco
BBVA. I can't pronounce it either.
That's much better. I can't pronounce it either. Yeah. So
Banco
has that changed anything, or are there any plans for the future? Or?
Yeah, it's given us a lot more resources to do the things that we want to do. You know, we are now 5 years into building this business. We only launched to customers 2 years ago, and we just celebrated our 2nd anniversary just recently with customers. This is a really slow business to build. Like, we work really quickly internally, but just because of the nature of what we're doing, the regulatory environment, the partners we have to work through, it takes a long time to do things. And it's difficult to build a business where the end game is to be a large bank, and large banks have relatively low returns on capital. It's very difficult to make that game plan line up with a venture capital game plan. And so we had some options for doing, you know, a larger Series C in a traditional VC round. We had some inbound interest from a few different firms. We had a long relationship with the folks at BBVA, and it became very clear that was very strong alignment with what we were trying to achieve. And we've, really happy with the outcome. I think the thing that excites them most about what we're doing is, you know, we've got great technology, we've got a great growing customer base, we've got a great approach to customer service. But what we've done that's, I think, unique to them is we've built a culture that enables all of those things. Before I started doing Simple, my assumption was that banks were just full of horrible people plotting nefarious ways to screw.
They are.
There are definitely some, but the bigger problem with banking is that they're really bad organisations. And when you have a lot of people who have really good intentions, who don't have the organisational support to do the right things, the organisation as a whole does bad things. So my number one job, really for the last couple of years, has been how do we build a culture where we don't become a bank in the sort of the cultural sense? And I think what BBVA really wants from us is to see, can we grow our business that grows the business in a way that we keep the culture and the important elements of that culture thriving? Because if we can do that, then we've really cracked the code to changing a much larger industry.
How fast are y'all growing staff-wise currently?
I think we've doubled our headcount in the last year. More than doubled. More than doubled. I don't know.
Are located here in Portland, right?
We are located here in Portland, yeah.
And your office space is currently holding out
No.
Going to need a replacement soon?
Yeah, so we're currently split over 2 offices. We have one just a couple of blocks that way and another one downtown. And at the end of the year, we're taking over the Puppet space over that way.
That's where we had our event last time. It was,
hopefully we'll be able to host you there later this year.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
So with Simple, you went in and changed the banking system. It'd be interesting to...
We started.
Sort of.
There's a lot more to go.
Well, it's a good start, I got to say.
Thank you.
I use Simple and I love it, and it's because of the customer service has been so awesome. Mm-hmm. And I've always had problems with banks, and it's because I feel the same. I feel like it's just evil people. Customer service and organization has been the worst part, and so it's cool to see that someone's kind of making an effort to change that and have no fees and stuff like that. But you guys are completely based online, which leaves you in trouble sometimes. Most recently, you've had a small outage, and it's the way you guys handled it that was amazing and actually earned you guys a lot of positive press. And so I'd like maybe talk a little bit about how y'all spun that situation to be positive.
It wasn't a question of spin. It's interesting when we started looking at this, like when we were doing the Series A lot of the VCs would ask, like, how do you get someone to trust an online startup bank? And so we went out and we spoke. At that point, we had like 20, 30,000 people who'd requested invites to the platform through that sign-up page. And so we sent out a survey, and a lot of it was focused on trust. And we discovered that people trust their banks as much as FDIC insurance provides. Like, you trust that your bank, if you put $1 there today, it's going to be there tomorrow. But if you ask them whether you trust the bank to provide advice that's aligned with your interests, like, no. Do you trust the bank to, communicate with you in a way that's open and honest, through the floor, horrible things? So we knew that those were the things that we had to get right, because yes, we're FDIC insured. That puts us on the same level of trust as banks today. But if through everything that we do, we can communicate sort of the tone I guess we go for is the informed friend, it does two things. One is through our product design and through the way that we present concepts like safe to spend and goals, we sort of reinforce this message that we're on your side. And then when you speak to us, the tone that we speak to you with is human. And when you have a relationship with a human rather than with a stone-faced institution, you can be more accommodating to mistakes. Like, when we screwed up, and we screwed up last week or the week before, and I put out a blog post and I said, look, we screwed up. My tweet was, we made a shitty experience for our customers. And like, it was a shitty experience. It's not like we went and did marketing research to say, should I say the word shitty? I mean, it was shitty. And so, we try to do the right thing for our customers every day. And that's great when everything's going really well. And when it goes poorly, we just have to do the exact same thing. And I'm not proud of like the situation that we put customers through, but I'm really proud of how our entire company embodies that just level of care and friendliness into helping people who have been in really tough situations.
I think a part of handling it was the pre-planning of building that community that laid to quick action. So it's kind of cool. And so is the focus still micro lending to gain money down the future, or is there a possible other source of income?
So, well, it's not really micro lending. Our model today is really like bog standard normal for banking, apart from the fees. So, like, as I said earlier, banks make most of their monies from fees and charges. Then they make money from reinvesting deposits into lending products. So we work with a partner bank today. They take all the monies that are in our sort of savings accounts and invest them into that community. And the interest rate difference there, they share some of that back with us. That's like the standard model of banking that's been around for centuries. We're not really looking to innovate on sort of the core treasury operations of a bank, the core business model. Like, we don't want to make money from customer confusion, so that means a lot of the fees that you see just don't exist at Simple. We never profit from fees. But where we innovate on the business model is really on the customer acquisition side. We think that if we can invest in great technology and great service, we don't have to spend as much money acquiring customers. Like, our biggest source of customers right now is customers. Like, we have a viral coefficient that means that most of our customers come as referrals. Banks, on the other hand, spend hundreds of dollars on a CPA basis to get someone into a checking account. We just don't have to do that because our customers like what we do. And so that's sort of the arbitrage we're playing.
And is the goal to be able to handle all services later on down the line as you grow? It's just... Yeah,
absolutely. Like, we know our customers are using goals to save up for lots of things. We'd love to be able to offer them better interest rates. We know that a lot of them are saving up for down payments on a house. We'd love to be able to offer them mortgages. We have a long list of things that we want to do. That's actually one of the things that BBVA allows us to do, because we were partnered with a small bank, and we still are partnered with a great small bank out of Delaware, but BBVA is a top 30 bank in America. They have a huge array of products that we can slot into the platform in a way that's in keeping with our product, but means that we can do mortgages the right way, we could do savings products the right way, we can do all the things that we know our customers want in a very simple way.
So you don't plan on doing lending? Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do lending, yeah. But mortgages are lending.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's in the future, I'm guessing.
In the future, yeah.
My brother would kill me, but I have to ask. He said, so why no joint accounts still?
It's my fault. Like, literally, it's my fault. The reason why is I had this idea that one of the things that we want to do with Simple is separate the notion of a financial product from a regulatory perspective from a use case. So, for example, the way that works right now is customers at Simple get two financial products. They get the card account and they get a savings account. But when they log in, they just see one stream of transactions, they see one safe to spend balance, and they use features like goals to manage the savings account. So we're trying to take this manual transmission interface that most banks give you, where you have to move money into your savings account and then move money to pay off your credit card. We think you can automate all of that in a way that just doesn't screw you over and is less worrying. We wanted to do that with joint accounts. So separate the notion of a regulated joint account from the user experience, which is permissions and sharing. And so we've been thinking a lot about sort of models of how we can do permissions and sharing in a really interesting way that not only sort of solves the use case for married couples, but also works for people who are in non-formal relationships, or parents and children, or housemates. It's a lot of situations where small social groups want to be able to share money. We wanted to be able to solve that. But it's taking a lot of time to build that. And so we'll be looking at stuff with joint accounts. Keep an eye out on our blog.
I'm sure he'll be really excited to know that it's coming at least.
Soon. No, soon. I can't say soon. Yeah. We're working on it.
It's in the future.
It's in the future. It's really hard. One of the things that we've learned is it's really hard to predict how long it takes to build this stuff. There's just so much regulatory work that it's really interesting that we sort of at this juxtaposition of the technology world that works at a certain speed and the banking regulatory environment, which I want to say works at a much slower speed. It just doesn't even move. It's like immobile. And so we're sort of bridging this gap where we're trying to bring these guys along and trying to bring the regulators along and trying to bring partners along.
Features, but you can't get the regulations and all the
so
banking system to
it just takes a lot of work and a lot of patience. And, you know, we had our platform running, live and working like 18 months before we had our first customer on the platform. And that was due to finalizing the language in the terms and conditions that that was what was holding us up for 18 months.
Language.
The language in the terms and conditions.
That would drive me insane.
Well, yeah, you have to be a little insane to do this stuff.
18 months just for one thing that's, I mean, almost completely out of your hands possible.
No, I mean, look, you know, we worked really hard to sort of craft the language in a way that was readable, and it just took a long time to get that right. Yeah.
Which is cool, because it stands to your, you know, strength in building a good community, which is what your company really stands for.
Yep.
I appreciate you coming out and telling us a little bit about Simple and yourself, and maybe take a chance to take some questions from the audience.
Totally. Happy.
So does anybody have any questions here tonight? We'll get Christian. We have a mic for you. Hold on one second.
Hey, Christian Perry. So you were in New York. Your co-founder at the time was in San Francisco. So why did you move to Portland?
Because my co-founder at the time was in Portland. Yeah. So Alex moved from San Fran to Portland before he left Twitter. He put up this big blog post maybe 9 months beforehand saying that he was moving up here. And he was actually working out of the Pi space at Wieden and Kennedy.
So what was he doing before he met you here?
He was at Twitter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
But my other co-founder was in New York with me.
But New York is the finance capital of the world. It would have been more logical for him to move there rather than you moving here.
Yeah, the reason why we moved here had nothing to do with finance, and that informs like a lot of our decisions. Like, we don't really care about where Wall Street is.
Good for you.
I love New York as a city. we wanted to provide really great customer service to our customers. And as much as I love New York, finding the people to work in a call center who are nice people is really hard. And Portland has a wealth of creative, educated, and honestly underemployed people who do an amazing job for us. And so we decided to consolidate the business over here when we were building out our first call center. So we could...
for all the nice underpaid hippies.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for hiring them.
Thank you.
They're awesome people.
All right, who is next? Nate?
Hi.
I know.
With such rapid growth, where's your bottleneck? Is it in the hiring? Is it in the training and onboarding? Where do you see, where's the bottleneck?
On the headcount side, hiring actually has been easier than we thought. We were always concerned with the move to Portland that it would be hard to find people. We knew that we'd have a good amount of luck on the customer relations side, and that's been great. It's now getting more competitive with Portland now being recognised as a great city for customer relations. We now have Airbnb moving their call centre here, and Squarespace and a few others. But I think we have a really compelling vision and a really compelling culture that allows us to remain attractive on that side. On the technology side, we were more concerned. But the reality is Portland is a phenomenal city. Most of our engineers before we moved up here were in San Francisco, and we didn't have to twist their arms to move them here. In fact, they'd moved voluntarily before we decided to move up here because they had young families, or they were starting families, or they just liked the outdoors and they liked the fact that a salary can go a really long way in this city. And so we've found a lot of luck hiring people from San Francisco, New York, and elsewhere because this is just a really great city to live in. So it actually hasn't been a bottleneck on the hiring side, yeah.
Easy to convince people to come to Portland, apparently.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. As long as you get them to come, like during this time of the year, it's great, yeah.
Nothing but sun.
Nothing but sun. Every day is like this.
It's nothing.
Yeah.
So, we have any more questions here?
So as we were saying, I'm in my first startup, and we raised a small seed round, and we have a team of 8, and just even to get to this point, there's such a roller coaster of ups and downs, and I can only imagine the roller coaster you've been through from a seed to an A to a B to an acquisition.
Right.
Can you just sort of address how you deal with problems, and something comes up, what's your first reaction?
Don't panic. It's interesting. Like, the roller coaster probably doesn't get any easier. What gets easier is your ability to sort of react and respond to it. If this is your sort of first time around, it's really, really daunting. I was in the fortunate position whereby I've been through a couple of startups beforehand, and it was interesting. So I was the first employee at the previous startup at Root, and I assumed that being the first employee is the exact same thing as being the founder, because I was there for every meeting from that business's formation. It's different. It's different when you're sort of in the driving seat, because all those decisions fall on your shoulders. You're the one who loses sleep over it. It's really important to stay healthy, exercise, have a social life, and not lose too much sleep over it, and not get caught up into the trap that everyone else is putting out this facade of they're all killing it, because everyone is going through their own struggles and they just don't talk about it. So find a great network, exercise, and don't stress too much.
And the support of good mentors and advice from
totally.
fellow.
And that's the thing that's great about this city. We were talking a little beforehand about how in San Francisco everything's so cutthroat and there's this huge macho attitude. Here, the community is small and tight-knit and really supportive, and you can have really good conversations with people where you can just cut through the bullshit and say, I'm having a problem that I don't know how to solve this. Have you done this before? And someone will be like, yeah, this is how you do it. Instead of like, oh, are you going to steal my people or whatever?
First thing I noticed here, you get Atlanta's where I originally came from, and you get every conversation is like, will you sign my NDA? It's like you carry your NDA around. So it's like, if you don't have a trademark formula like Coca-Cola or something, tell as many people as you possibly can your idea and get feedback and advice and mentorship. And so I think that's an interesting quality to take in. So, Jason?
So the question for the camera is how much did we have to build before investors would stop slamming the door in the face? A PowerPoint well, it wasn't actually a PowerPoint presentation. We never used PowerPoint. We didn't actually build, I mean, I built a prototype, but it was funny speaking to seed investors who just didn't understand financial services, who were like, really good idea. Come back when you have 1,000 customers and I'll write you a check for $10,000. I'm like, okay, we need like $2 million in capital just to get the regulatory stuff in place before we have one customer. So thanks. What we did have for our Series A was a prototype that really didn't pay much into the conversation. It was just like, almost could have been in a presentation. What we had was we had a big sign-up list. We had lots of conversations with potential customers. We had a lot of data around how the idea would operate, and we'd learnt a lot about how the business worked. So we did our Series A at the point we were ready to sign sort of key partnerships. So we had banks signed up, we had processing partners, we had sort of contracts that required millions of dollars and would bring in millions of dollars at scale. We had all of that ready to go. But really what we learnt over that year was enough stuff to answer every single question that a VC could ask and just do it convincingly and get them over the hump. But we hadn't actually built a lot.
Pitch comes with practice.
Yeah, I mean, we'd never had like a really polished pitch because it was, the idea is really easy to get in your head, like a bank that's not horrible. Like, yeah, you can talk about features and stuff, but like the core idea is not that groundbreaking. It's all the details. Like, how do you deal with one of a million regulations? How do you deal with these various competitive threats?
The regulatory information you were spending so much time on that was actually important to the VCs.
So lots of times with lawyers, lots of time, honestly, reading Wikipedia, reading like the regulations themselves, speaking to regulators, and getting to a point where you could speak confidently about what's involved so that they could say, okay, we like you as people. We know that you have an experience building things in the past and you can sort of do technology that's this complicated and you can speak cogently about the user experience you want. But all the risks that they were worried about were regulatory risks, customer acquisition risks. The regulatory risk we addressed by just learning our shit and being able to speak coherently there and getting opinions from lawyers and like formal opinion letters. And the marketing stuff, we sort of got some peace of mind there by having a large sign-up list and understanding those data points. Yeah.
Thank you. We have maybe time for one more question. And get over here.
Hey, Josh, your branding and the graphics on your site are great. They seem to be very much in keeping with the simple name and probably, I'm guessing, your overall mission and overarching concept to simplify banking. Can you talk a little bit about, do you have internal talent that you hired? Do you have external partners? Because it looks fantastic.
Thank you. A lot of our branding and a lot of the look and feel is really due to a couple of things. One is we all, at least the very early team, had a very similar aesthetic. But a lot of that stuff was done. We were talking about going out and getting a logo done and all that sort of stuff. And one of our JavaScript engineers, who's a real sort of polymath, he'd studied computer graphics and design and is a strong engineer, was like, can I take a stab at this? And we were just blown away. And it was a collaborative process. And our design process and our product process at Simple is extraordinarily different. And it's really core to our culture. We don't have a top-down methodology for a lot of these things. We really want it to be collaborative so that everyone has ownership and agency. And going back to sort of the thing I was talking about with the interest from BBVA at our culture, we believe that if we can achieve three things, we can scale this business in a way we can be proud of. One is always listening to customers and feeding that input back into the business. Two is having an environment where people have a lot of agency, and that goes into our design, the way we approach product. And three is making sure that everyone in the company understands what we're trying to achieve. And so we're very transparent internally and also externally about where we're going well, where we're going wrong. All of our board decks are open. And this means that we have a culture whereby a customer service agent will hear a problem from a customer. Not only will solve that problem, but our agents are the #1 generator of new product ideas, which is unlike a lot of other product processes. And you can see those parallels into our design process, where people will just toy around with things, work on things in their basements here in Portland, bring them into the office and say, what do you think of this? And we're like, that's cool, let's do that. I saw one more question over there, and she's had her hand up for a while. Can we do one more?
Time.
Yeah.
Here's and ask a consumer-related question.
Sure.
If that's all right. In terms of all of the recent hacking and breaching credit card data with Albertsons, Target, how are you differentiating or moderating people's banks to make me want to switch over from a U.S. bank, a Bank of America, like?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's kind of crazy that the weakest point in sort of banking security is really at the periphery. These hackings, we're seeing a lot of this stuff coming out of Heartbleed. A lot of the local merchants, even here locally, are running old versions of SSL on their point of sale terminals. They're being man in the middle and cards are being taken. And it's really hard because we are, at a core, a very tech-driven company. We have phenomenal security engineers that we've hired from the NSA and banks, and we take a very proactive stance on the stuff that we do. But we're working within an environment where it's very fragile. And so our systems are good. Like, we've never had any issues there, but still customers get impacted by a merchant getting hacked. Like that Target thing sucked. And what we have to do there is we have to tell people, it's not us. It wasn't us, it was Target. But then we do everything we can to make it right for our consumers. So as soon as we heard about this, there were sort of rumblings on this on Brian Krebs's security blog before it got admitted to by Target. The first thing we went out and did was reissued cards for every customer who'd been at Target. We're really proactive on this stuff and just trying to do the best we can in an environment that isn't great for consumers right now.
Cool, thank you. I want to first thank you for your time and thank the crowd, and I really appreciate you coming out.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.